Message this morning is on the joy of the cross. We spent several weeks in the last month, I think, maybe month and a half, talking about joy and rejoicing. With all the things going on in life today, it's easy to be pulled away from joy. Why or how is because we often take our eyes off Jesus, the true source of our joy, and let Satan slip into our lives and sometimes devouring us. We don't openly do it. We don't do it on purpose. But the things surrounding us can cause it very easily. Life itself, the things of life, can trip you up. The verses leading up to in chapter 15, leading up to verse 11, Jesus was addressing personal relationships. First slide, Tyler, I'm sorry. Personal relationships with himself. We're all supposed to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Chapter 15 talks about being connected to the vine. He is the vine. The Bible says we are the branches. Being connected is abiding in and with Him, and by abiding in Him, it produces fruit. And the Bible says it produces much fruit. Much fruit brings joy. And that's in verse 5. We produce much fruit. Verse 10 says, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. Now that wasn't on the screen, but that's what verse says. 10 says, if you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love. Verse 11 says, I've told you these things that your joy may be full. How do you have a joyful life? Abide in His love. Do the things that God's called us to do, and you will have a joyful life. And I often use the term, bah humbug. Why would anybody want to be a Christian if we live a bah humbug life? Now, I'm not going to say we'll be perfect. I'm not going to say we're never going to mess up. I'm not saying that we don't make mistakes. But are you living in that mistake? That's what you got to search out. Joy comes by abiding. Being grafted into God, being grafted into the tree or to the root or the branch, being grafted in, and following God's will. Do we abide in His will? Are we witnesses to His will? Are we witnesses to the branch of Christ? Do we love? John 15:12 through 13 says, this is my commandment, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. Greater love has no man than this, than one that lays down his life for his friends. You know, Jesus laid down His life for us. We are told to lay down our lives for our friends. Now, does that mean death always? No. Sometimes it might. But we need to put them ahead of ourselves. That's what that verse means. And the only way you can do that is you have to be involved with other people. Not just the brothers and sisters you go to church with, but the world. We have to be involved. But we have to be cautious when we are involved. Next slide. This is an entirely different passage. The devil came to destroy your life and your witness. That's the only reason the devil's running around today, is to destroy us as Christians. How does this relate to us today? Are we living a sacrificial life, or are we living a destroyed life? Are we living a down in the dumps life? If the devil came to destroy you, how does it relate to us today? Especially as Christians who claim God's truths. How does it affect us? We're still humans. And Satan, believe it or not, knows our weaknesses better than we know our weaknesses ourselves. All he has to do is cause you to take your eyes off Jesus. He sneaks in through your TV, your radio, your computer, work associates, family, friends. He steals your time from God. And that's the first step, really. If you let busyness take away from your time with God, you will lose your joy. You'll lose your happiness. Then he adds roadblocks. He adds roadblocks in your life. In work, in family, in friends, in sickness, in relationships, wayward children, and family. Wayward relationships with your children and with family. I've been there. I've had bad relationships with family. Drugs, broken marriages, broken homes, money, debt, wars, government, taxes, and yes, even in church. The devil will destroy you at anything that's employed or anything that is important to you. He will attack you. And he'll continue attacking you. And the only way you can get out of it is trusting God. It may not one of these be directed to you personally, but your family or your friends. Some may lose a job for simply standing up on your faith, or other reasons. Your family and friends also may lose a job. Drugs can cause major family issues. A family member, a child that has walked away from God. I've been there. I walked away from God. I have children that have walked away from God. And that affects me. In many ways, if I dwell on it, it steals my joy. Does that make sense? It steals your joy when you have that happen in your family. And all it is a rejection of God. Marriage problems in families. Broken relationships with kids and grandkids. Money problems. Maybe you didn't trust God enough in your money, and you overextended yourself. A loss of job of a family member. I've already talked about my loss of job, or your loss of job, but a family member. Especially if your family member loses their job and you're already helping them as much as you can financially, and then all at once they lose a job. Does that sort of steal from your joy if you take your eyes off Jesus? See, all these little things take your eyes off of Jesus, affect your joy. And a major accident. We think about Preston, that major accident. Well, fortunately, through the church, through not only this church but other churches, this family is coming back to God. Okay? Because of the influence of Christians that are trying to do the work of God. So see, it's part of our duty to do those things. Death. I can talk about Lauren real quick. Lauren, her and her husband, I did their marriage 9 years ago, 10 years ago, 9 years ago. I married him. He professed to be a Christian, but I was really concerned. But he said he was a Christian. He gave me his testimony, everything. But immediately, they started going the wrong direction. About a year ago, and I even asked the question, a year ago, they got involved in church. Heavily involved in church. Bible study all during the week, church services, meeting with their friends, their Christian friends and brothers, small groups they got together, doing things at church or with church family to get them connected. Well, they had a death. He died suddenly. He was scheduled for heart surgery the next day, and he died during preparation. Okay? Do you know that the church that God connected them with showed up over and over and over? They fed them abundantly. Lauren didn't like to cook. Mike cooked. So they gave them gift cards because they couldn't provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So the church groups that they ran with gave them gift cards to go to eat meals. They'd go one for breakfast, one for lunch, one for dinner, one for lunch, one for, every day. For several weeks, this church has taken care of them. The church came and babysat the kids. Took the kids to their house to get away from. That brings joy in the time of trials and tribulations. The church said, I think I said this last week, they didn't have any insurance. They had medical insurance, but that was it. The church gave money. Others gave money. Christians that I know, okay, gave money to help with the funeral. And then the church set up a scholarship fund for all 3 kids, that when they get to be college age, they'll be able to go to college if they want to, because money is going to be tight. See, that's sharing your joy. That's being the hands and the feet of Jesus. That's what God's called us to do, is to be the hands and the feet of Jesus and show up. So I just gave you 2 instances of where we are involved either by prayer or financially. Okay? See? That's joy. It's joyful that we can do those things. John 10 talks about Jesus' sheep. Many say that the sheep are the dumbest animals of creation. Now, I don't know that that's true, but I've heard that all my life. I've heard that all my life, okay? But I said this may be because who else is dumb? We are. We are dumb people. We've got the greatest gift ever given to mankind. And how many people reject it? We have the greatest country ever formed in the world. How dumb have we become? And I'm sorry I'm using the word dumb, but I couldn't think of another word, because I would have said the other one that I know you don't like. Okay? How dumb have we become? We got everything we need, everything we want, and God promises us that He will always meet our needs. Always. But yet we don't trust Him for it. We just sometimes are dumb. But Jesus was talking about His sheep. Who are we? His sheep. We're Jesus' sheep, God's sheep. And it says that a thief, a robber, or a stranger can come in and take God's children. Now, he was talking literally when he was talking about this in John, he was talking about the sheepfold. But he's comparing it to us as children of God. We are sheep. And it also talks about how a sheep can be led astray. God's children can be led astray. But in the sheepfold, they were protected. as long as we stay in the sheepfold, we'll be protected. It goes back to abiding when we're talking about the vine. Abiding in His love. And following Him and staying close to Him. But if you're not abiding, the devil slips in. If you're not in the sheepfold, the devil will slip in. John 10, 10 and 11 say, 10, the thief, Satan, comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. That's talking about the sheepfold. That's talking about us as sheep following Christ. But the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. But there's good news at the end of that verse. And I put the word but in. But I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. As Christians, we have life abundantly. We can have it here on this earth, and I don't mean financial, and I don't mean all that stuff, but in our heart we can have an abundant life. But absolutely we'll have an abundant life in heaven. It's preparation. It's a growing process. And in that verse, if you read that verse closely, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but Jesus came to give you life abundantly. It's your way out. Jesus is your only way out. Verse 11 says, I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. What did Jesus do? He stretched them arms out. He laid down his life for us. And the last verse 14 says, I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Does he know you? Are you following the way you should? What gets in the way of you serving or joining with God's children? Is it your goals, your pride, your relationships, your sports, your hobbies, your work? And I'll even add one more. Preacher, you don't just know. I work hard all week, every week. Sunday's my day of rest. I got to stay home and rest. That is from the devil. God set aside a day for us. Now, Old Testament was 6 days shall a man labor, and Sabbath he should rest. The New Testament on the first day of the week. That's why we celebrate Sundays. Next slide. Walk with God and win. When you put all your faith and your trust in God, He will see us through every situation, every heartache, every trial, every disappointment, every sickness, every loss and death. We are winners. Do you know that you're a winner in Christ? Do you know that if you put God first, you're on the winning team? And it can be here on earth and it can be beyond. It will be beyond, but it can be here on earth. It's all about your walk. Romans 8:26 says, in the same way, the Spirit also helps our weakness. We all have weaknesses. We all have things that get into us, get under our skin. And we all have times with the second part of this verse. For we do not know how to pray as we should. But the Spirit Himself intercedes for us, with groanings too deep for words. God knows us and directs us as we listen. Are we listening? Romans 8:28 says, and this is a verse that I cling to all the time, and we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those that love God and those that are called according to His purpose. Are you called? Are you a Christian? Have you been called by Christ to live out that life? Are you acting like it? It doesn't say, all things are good. The devil likes to throw, like in the previous verse, likes to throw curveballs at us, likes to throw things at us to disrupt us. But they all work out for His plan, His purpose. And then Romans 8:31 says, what then shall we say to these things? What should we say with all the garbage going on in life? What should we say with all the distractions, all the stuff goes on? What shall we say to these things? And here's the perfect answer. If God is for us, who is against us? King James says, who can be against us? We're on the winning team. Nothing can happen to me unless it flows through God's hands first. God will make a way when there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He will make a way for me. That's not a Bible verse, that's a song. Did we sing it? No, we haven't sang it recently. God makes a way if we put all our faith and trust in Him. And not in how much money we make, not in how successful we are, not in anything else but trusting in Him. And when you trust in Him, He will give you what you need. He'll give you many of the desires of your heart. It doesn't say trials won't come. Trials are usually for correction, growth, or reflection. Did you get that? Trials can correct us, they can cause us to grow, or they can cause us to reflect on the situation. That's what trials are. Next slide. The devil can't win. Romans 8:36 through 39. For your sake we are put to death all day long. We were considered as sheep to be slaughtered. But all of these things, get this, we were overwhelmingly conquered through Him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death, life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor any created thing will be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus. I'll go back with that verse right there. We're on the winning team. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. We're winners in every situation. I told Ron this morning that we typed out a verse, and I typed out Romans 12:1. But that wasn't the verse I was looking for. Although it does apply partly, but it did not do what I wanted to do. And I will read both verses. But the verse I was actually looking at, meant to type, meant for my wife to type, or Tyler to type, was Hebrews 12:1 and 2. And I'm going to read it. Therefore, since we have a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance and the sin which easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter, King James Version says, finisher of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who has endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. Now the caption on that verse is, Jesus is our example. That's our example. Jesus is our example. And then the one I put in my notes, and God has a purpose. Therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies living and holy sacrifice, acceptable God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove that the will of God is that which is good and acceptable and perfect. Walk in joy. Walk in the will of God. And God will see you through every circumstance in your life. You might hit some rough bumps, but most of the time when you hit those rough bumps, it's because you took your eyes off God just for a minute. And when you take your eyes off God, it's real easy to get distracted.